So at the center is the French cafe table, which is all conversations. And then as you kind of go out, you've got the 5 missions, which I took Marie Davis on a walkthrough and John Bukovich yesterday, and they're like, you got to talk about this stuff. So that being my thesis, this is after thesis. So this is what we're planning. My dad and I, right before we left for this, pitched to a pretty neat guy, VAT, which is a city public work project, which is about the 5 Spanish missions. So our city, where I'm from, literally is because of these 5 buildings. They're about 300 and something years old. The Alamo was a mission. There are actually 6 missions, and the 6th one is the 6th hole on Brackenridge Golf Course to the left. Like, you literally see like a golf flag and a little plaque. It's like, this is the 6th mission. And I'm like, I gotta do a painting of that. So it starts here, and Sandy got it. What is this based off of? An experience in France.
The L'Orangerie.
So there's L'Orangerie, which is Monet's water lily paintings, which actually curve. And because they curve, they're considered one of the first installations of modern times, because it moved. And so we start here. Also the Rothko Chapel, which is Mark Rothko, all hail. The paintings all talk to each other. So this one's San Juan Capistrano, and we basically started because of acequias, which were a really inexpensive aqueduct. It was basically a ditch that channeled water from the river everywhere. So when you go visit the missions, I did some little studies. If you look to the left, behind this cactus, there's the acequias, for real. Like, that's why it says that way. And then you've got the Stations of the Cross. These are all active missions still. So they still have parishes. So what you have is you have water, which is like the key to South Texas. And then as you move over, you go into like growth, like where things grow from. That's why your viewpoint is you're in the river getting water, literally. That's what all these plants are about. And then you have what's called the Queen of the Missions, which is Concepcion. They called her the Painted Lady because this is the queen and the Alamo is the king. The idea behind the painted thing, I think this one, I don't know which order this is, that's Franciscan. This I think is Jesuit or something. And their idea was that when the people that were originally from South Texas, some people call them mestizos, there's all these different terms. The Indians, basically, but not like Apaches, because they came way later. It was like the people from South Texas. They would get water and they'd look at this building and they'd go, oh my gosh, what in the world is that? And then they would go up to the mission and they'd talk and meet people and stuff. And then from here, that's why it says pour water, por vida. And I actually mix a lot of language. And I'll get to that on that painting. But these were the original markings of the mission itself. Right here and right here. They actually went right there. So all the little arrows and lines and words are pointing you to what things are. Then you kind of move over to espada, which means in Spanish the spear, and the sword. So they call espada because it's at the point of all the missions. It's the closest to Mexico. And it's Franciscan. So as you go from the acequias, which water, and the plants that grow, you go to cultivating. So that's why you see all the little pots and flowers and the little French cafe table. So you will always see people visiting the missions, and what's really cool is they're actually active parishes. When you talk with all the guards and stuff, I've been going to the missions for like 6 months now for the thesis. What's up, guys? You okay? I'm in the middle. We're going from acequias to growth to cultivation. Guys, this is the budges. Just hop on with the Vespa, literally. We're on a Vespa ride. So you've got all the flowers that are growing. And then what's most important is like the well. Again, I'm connecting the water with the water and the path. But then the path, the water is what makes the tree grow. That's why it's blue. So I'm just using like colors and forms and stuff to actually tell the story itself. And that cross is really there. They're really proud of it. It's a very rugged little cross. And then my brother, when we were painting in the studio one day, he was visiting from Houston. He went, dude, you need more linear perspective. I'm like, what? He's like, I don't care what you do. Just like get some tape and like make it more linear perspective-y. So he got some tape and put it on there so it says Eric's Ideas of Symmetry. So, there's all these little funny, quirky notes in them. See, it says trees, and then espada, and then it translates itself. And that's where you come to this one, which is kind of the teaching one. It starts in a note down here, which is the grass was so green this summer, and the cicadas were singing so loud at San Juan Capistrano. Well, this isn't San Juan Capistrano, but San Juan Capistrano says San Juan Capistrano right there. And the thing that you have to remember with the missions, they were all linked. Like, they were all about a horse rides away from each other. So they would all communicate with each other. That's why they're facing in. And then I'm pointing out certain things in both scattered Spanish and English, because when you came into the missions as a mestizo or as like a native Texan, which wasn't Texas yet, we'll talk about that in this one, you came into order, or what they considered order, right? So farming, there was enough water, there was enough food, you could have shelter, which is kind of a double-edged sword. I mean, depending on which side you take. There is a cloud that's cut in half. Thank you, Eliot and Professor Walton. The bell tower was the most important thing. And that's where I heard in France from Professor Patrick Huey, who will come today, the concept of time. So in the 14th century, 15th century, 16th century, and on, the idea of the bell tower, it was like the Google of the time. Everything rotated around the bell tower and when it tolled. And basically, how important you were societally grew and changed from how close you were to the bell tower. Because if you were farmers out in the field, well, the sun rose and the sun set, you already knew what time of day it was. Sun rises, I got to go to work. Sun sets, I got to get back in. Whereas if you're in organized culture and society, you need to be at Vespers, you need to be at daily mass, you need to be at prayer, you need to be... And the bell is the thing that would tell you that. Is the world an ideal world when we go to the Renaissance? No. So whenever someone's like, we just need to go back to the Renaissance, I'm like, no, we don't. A lot of people died in the Renaissance. And then you've got like the sky and the sun and all that stuff. And what's interesting about this is this little window is called the rose window, and I think it's what they based the top of the Alamo on. So now we go to like the one that's the most different. Like it's different than all the other ones. Perspective-wise, it's dead on. It's right in the center. You've got a little patch of green grass, but you have a lot of red, and it's very powerful. So this tells the history of Texas, and I really didn't know what a big deal the Alamo was until I studied it. It is because of this building that we have Texas, for real, and the battle that happened. So it was one of the missions. It probably looked more like this one. That's what this little dotted line is. And when you get, I'm not going to read all the notes, but read the little notes. They're really funny and really quirky, and keep the sense of humor with it. But it is a giant Texas flag. When the battle happened, it was 5:30 in the morning. As John Bukovich pointed out yesterday, where's the sun? And so I put a little sun, a little arrow down. It's the morning. So the sun's on the other side. And what happened at the Battle of the Alamo is Santa Anna came marching in, and he was not to be messed with. That was really a big, bad deal. When you said Santa Anna's marching on you, watch out, because he considered himself the Napoleon of Mexico. I mean, he really did. And when I was researching the history of like what that Battle of the Alamo was, the ballistics, that's why it says Napoleonic-style cannon fire, they pummeled the Alamo for like 2.5 weeks solid, all day long. And the idea was that you just wear people out mentally, emotionally, you get them tired. But what would happen is the Texans were so obsessed with actually defending the Alamo that at night they'd sneak out, fill all the holes, and then go back in, and nobody died. In all the siege, no one was killed at all. Then if you read on the door, it says the 32 from Gonzales. Have you ever seen the flag Come and Take It with the cannon and the star? It's a big Texas thing. It's not the Alamo. Like everybody's like, yeah, come and take it. I'm like, no, that's Gonzales. That's a different thing. But Gonzales led up to the Alamo, and the 32 that won at Gonzales were at the Alamo. They came in the back, and everybody died anyway. So what happened is the day of the battle, they flew the red flag at what's called San Fernando Cathedral, And everybody knew at that time what that meant. That meant no quarters given. You're all going to die. If we get in that wall, you're gone. And so the last letter that Travis sent to Houston was victory or death. That was like it. And so the Alamo was taken in about an hour and a half. But when they all died, there's only one person that lived, which was Travis's slave. And they let him live, and he lived in Louisiana for the rest of his life. He was just fine. His name was Jim. It was in some notes and stuff. I was like, that's random. But when Travis died, he just went into another room and just stopped fighting. He was like, I am no longer under contract. Deuce. And that's why Santa Ana let him go. They're like, you didn't have anything to do with this. Move on, you know? So it says on the door, Texas was started with this structure, the Goliad 32, the men who died and fell with a vision, and in their falling, a state was started. And how Texas was started is at a later battle, but they said, remember Gonzales, remember the Alamo.
Well, so that we can get everything historically correct, the Texans said, remember Goliad and remember the Alamo, not Gonzales. Because Fannin and his men who were trying to get to San Antonio lost their cannon in a little creek called the Coleto Creek, and then they surrendered to the Mexican army unconditionally. So that means I surrender unconditionally, you don't kill me. Well, then they marched them into Goliad and killed all of them. And they burned their bodies in a heap and buried it. And actually my father's scout troop found the bones, and then they created a monument over where that was done. So remember, Goliad was important. They won at Gonzales. They weren't remembering that. This is what the idea for this is that, have any of you been to Houston into a place called the Rothko Chapel, or do you know this place? Nobody's been there? Mark Rothko painted, I don't know, maybe 12 paintings or so. They're huge. These are small paintings compared to Rothko's. And Johnson Burgee, a firm, Philip Johnson, an architect, who you probably would know the name of, out of New York, designed
skyline, basically.
Designed a chapel to house these paintings. Rothko didn't like it, so he fired Johnson Burgee and redesigned it himself. But it's one of those places in the world that's a very sacred place. It's a sacred place to all religions. It's not just Christian. It's everybody. And there are no crosses or stars of David or anything that denotes any religion, just these huge paintings. And you walk into it, it's an octagonal building with a skylight, and all of them look black. You walk in through these huge doors and go into an anteroom and then go into this space that's an octagon. And it's a place of great reverence for everybody. Very quiet. All the paintings are different, are the lowest shade of color. So none of them is black, but when you look at them at first, you think they're all black. And they're very clean, huge paintings with movement inside them, so you see things after a while. You create in the paintings things that you know, not the paintings exude. So it's a place where Renee and I decided we were going to get married, actually. So it's real important to our family, especially him and his brother.
I'm a byproduct.
So the idea was, Rex, the things that he paints that he sells a lot of are Duomos, like from Milan or from Florence or other places, big churches. And people tend to like those paintings. And I said, well, Rex, San Antonio, we have 5 missions. Why don't you paint those? I mean,
that literally was the beginning of these paintings. Right?
You go all the way across the world to paint chapels, so why don't we got them right here? And they're 300 years old, so go for it.
And they just became a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
And in 2018, on May the 8th, they will be 300 years in the making, 300 years old. And as Rex has said, they still are doing their job. as Christian sites. So we thought it would be a nice idea. Lots of people downtown, when he was downtown, talking about the Alamo or
I was
looking at
doing
the
little
Alamo.
studies for these, and people would talk with me.
People would talk with him, and he would say, well, have you seen the other missions? And they go, what other missions? So most people know about the Alamo and the battle there, but they don't know what the mission was before it was the Alamo. It actually moved twice. It was really a presidio, or a fort to protect the other missions when at the time of the battle. So I said, well, why don't we create a kiosk or something downtown using these illustrations as murals in chipped tile, so there'll be mosaics, so they'll withstand the weather.
And goes back to Spain and Gaudi.
And create a space where somebody could go in and sit down, and we would be talking about the rivers with fountains, so we'd have fountains on the insides, and the walls would be built like the missions, so that the heritage of the missions in San Antonio is pulled forward a little bit. A place just to sit that has the river, which created San Antonio. That's why San Antonio's there, because the river was there. The missions. And Texas is sort of a dry place, but a very beautiful place. So it would have plantings that are around around this thing, and it's Texas heritage in a star. And so the elements we put back together again, got an idea of a circle, gave it to an architect, a friend of ours, Josh Pierce, and he popped that up in 3Ds in Revit so we could take a look at it.